Welcome to A Meaningful Marketplace.
I'm Sarah Masoni from Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center, where I've helped countless dreamers launch their new food products. It's the science of taking a food delight from the kitchen to mass manufacturing and still keeping its great taste. That's what I do. I've been called the woman with the $1 million palate, although I haven't tried to cash that check yet. Listen in weekly for real-life stories.
I'm Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Hot Sauce and author of Preservation Pantry, modern canning from root to top and stem to core. I love inspiring business owners to get started on their journey, encourage folks to be part of their local community, and I'm excited to help business owners tell their stories. Hello and welcome to the Meaningful Marketplace. We are here weekly to discuss the journeys of food entrepreneurs. We're glad you've joined us today as we bring you stories of hope and inspiration. This is Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Hot Sauce.
And Sarah Masoni of Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center. Howdy, Sarah Marshall.
Hi, Sarah Masoni. I referred someone to your booklet, to your Amazon booklet today.
Oh?
And realized that now you have two. Is that right?
So I added a second one, and it's a story of being a food entrepreneur because some people need to read stories to learn stuff. So I just put a quick story together for them.
That's so cool. Well, I have a farm friend who, wants to try to sell some value added products, and we're talking about jams, and so I figured that would be a good first step. And what they really liked about it is that it was a very inexpensive start.
99 cents.
99 cents. So there you go. They were like, right now, every dollar is super valuable. Our farm is slowing down. We're just trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, here's a good first step.
I'm just trying to connect with a community of folks that don't have a lot of cash to get started, but have so much potential.
I think that's great. And I think it was really helpful. I think sometimes when you're just sort of feeling like you're floundering and you don't really know what to do, you just need a little bit of a guiding light. So I think that's what this resource is creating. So good job.
Yeah, I think I've sold 45 copies or something.
Nice. I love that.
I make 30 cents per book I sell.
But think of all the people you're going to guide, It's such a cool thing that you're doing.
Yeah, it's fun. What about you? What are you doing this week? Birthday girl.
Yes, it is my birthday. I am working.
Birthday week.
I'm going to be at the Gobble Up event on my actual birthday.
Where is that at?
It's going to be at the Red this year. I'm doing the Portland one, and then there's a Seattle one a couple weeks later. So if people are interested in that, they can find that out. It's just a nice way to kind of slink our way into holiday events. So that's kind of the first one. Lots of cool local makers, I believe, including our guest today. We'll find out later, but I think we'll all be there at Gobble Up. And then I did have an announcement to make, which is that I am producing a new podcast that launches November 13th. It's the Joy of Cooking podcast with the co-authors of Joy of Cooking. So people will be able to find that on their favorite podcast platforms. So if you're interested in cooking at home, that's what we're trying to inspire people to do. And it will be different than this podcast because you don't actually hear me, but I am there. Which is kind of a fun way to do it. Producing without talking.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if people want to find that, you can find it on iTunes and all of those great places.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm super stoked. It's really fun. And then, it inspires me too to cook all kinds of great things. So hopefully that's
They
what
do
we're
have
doing.
a really good caramel corn recipe in that cookbook.
Have you made it?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll mention it on the next show. Caramel corn, fun. Well, we've been partnering with the Regional Food Business Center to bring you guests from the 6-state region. We're currently meeting with business owners from the great state of Washington. I would like to introduce you to our co-host, Emily, from Washington State. Thank you for being our Washington guide and expert while we meet all these wonderful new friends. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me, and happy early birthday.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Do you have any Washington food news or events you want to tell us about?
I do, actually. We have 2 virtual events coming up this week throughout the Regional Food Business Center here in the Northwest and Rocky Mountain region. This upcoming Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we have a marketing solutions roundtable that's focused on creating markets for artisan grains. And that's happening through our diverse markets focus team. And again, that's Wednesday. And you can find out about that on our website. And on Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we have a Business Basics Finance 101 course that will be recorded and put on the website for future access. But that's a 1-hour workshop designed for business owners and operators, and that's free to attend. They'll focus on what to track as a business owner, bookkeeping, getting paid, very important, planning revenue, and the negative impact of neglecting your finances. So definitely recommend spending an hour of your day in Finance 101 later this week.
Cool. And people can find those by going to Northwest Regional Food Business Center. Is that right?
Yes, and the best place to find them is just right on our event page that takes you to any extra links that you'll need to access those events.
Perfect. Well, thank you for those resources. And it's always good to have things that people can access on their own time later, because I know that I watch a lot of things like that at midnight when everybody else in my house is asleep. Well, we would like to encourage you to connect with your state by signing up for the Regional Food Business Center newsletter. It's a breeze to sign up. Just go to Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center.com, hit connect with us, and choose the button to receive newsletters. We want to thank our sponsor for supporting Masoni and Marshall. Thank you for helping us spread the word about small business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's hear a word from our sponsor. The Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center is the proud sponsor of the Meaningful Marketplace podcast, giving a voice to food from across the 6-state region of Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. The Food Business Center supports Northwest and Rocky Mountain food industry makers as part of the USDA's National Network of Food Business Centers, supporting a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system as a go-to source for small and mid-tier food and farm businesses with a focus on underserved communities, providing education in the form of technical knowledge, business programs, and industry news. We sponsor trade shows, meetups, and conferences to connect growers, producers, retailers, distributors, and processors, all to stimulate business and raise the standards of our storied food industry. Join us as we travel through the 6-state region, learning more about food makers, food hubs, and food systems. Visit the website at Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Businesses.com to get connected. And I would like to introduce you to Jessica today. She is the owner of Häxan Ferments, making fermented hot sauce and vinegar in Washington. Welcome, Jessica.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. We see each other at lots of events and things.
We've been crossing paths.
Yeah, we've crossed paths for many years. Well, we always like to connect our listeners to you directly. So can you tell them how they find you on social media and online?
We're most active on Instagram, so you can find us at Häxan Ferments. That's our handle. And then we have our website at häxanferments.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And can you start at the beginning of your journey and tell us why you started your business?
Yeah, so I've always been a really passionate home cook. I got really into fermentation, which is kind of the basis of our whole company and all the products we make. When I was in graduate school, I was studying molecular biology, and I got really into fermentation as this like sort of science experiment where you can eat the results, and it kind of took over my kitchen. After I finished grad school, I moved to Seattle, and I was really inspired by all of the farmers markets and the amazing produce and just the amazing food scene out here. I really wanted to find a way to work in it, and I got really inspired by seeing other small food businesses that seemed to be doing really cool things. And I didn't see anyone else making fermented hot sauces in the way I'd been doing it at home, and decided that I would try marketing some of the sauces I've been making and see where it would take us. And we've been around now for about 6 years, so things are moving. So
yeah, and let's, in case our listeners don't know, let's talk about lacto fermenting and why it's cool and important to our bodies.
Yeah. Fermentation is a really like expansive process. It covers a lot of different things, but when you think of like kimchi or sauerkraut or just like classic fridge pickles, those are usually a fermented product. So essentially we are letting the bacteria that live on the skin of most veggies digest and eat some of the enzymes in the vegetables, and it sours the product and really enriches the flavors. It adds a lot of probiotics and good stuff for your gut, but what we really like about fermentation is that it unlocks these flavors that you can't get anywhere else. It makes it taste stuff tastes really distinct and unique. And it's a really simple process that we're able to manage a little bit.
Now that I know you're a molecular biologist, I'm confident that your product's consistent. Can you tell us what quality measures you use in your fermentation project
Yes.
to make sure everything's the same?
Yeah, so the main thing we do is track the pH. So we check our pH usually about 48 hours after we initiate our fermentation, just to make sure things are kicking off. And then we track the pH at the end to make sure that we're hitting all the measures that we want to be. I do approach every batch as sort of a unique ecosystem. Like every time it's going to be a little bit different. Since we're using a lot of the same peppers and the same ingredients, and a lot of the process that happens is also like the environment that it's in, we're going to get similar results. But yeah, we treat each batch as kind of its own little world.
Can you share any interesting or surprising facts about fermentation that most people might not know?
Oh my gosh. I probably did have some. So I think one fact I really love is that vinegar appears to be like one of the oldest foods that we know of. Vinegar fermentation is a slightly different process, but it's present in every culture, basically. Like every food culture had some form of vinegar, and it was all kind of naturally occurring. We now make vinegar in a slightly different way because we can sort of initiate it versus what was happening was just spontaneous. But it seems to be the oldest food, and we have records like back to 2000 BC or something of people making vinegar on purpose.
Emily, do you have any experience with fermenting, or are you seeing any cool fermented projects coming out of Washington?
That's a great question. I have some experience, but I wouldn't necessarily say that mine is cool. I've done a lot of non-scientific fermenting, especially as we all did in early 2020. So big fan of, frantic kitchen sauerkraut and things like that. But I think it's definitely getting bigger throughout the country. And I'm sure you've seen that reflected in your work. But yeah, as you've said, in Washington, we have so many great farmers and creative and innovative food businesses that it's definitely on the rise. But because there's so much of that flavor profile that you're talking about, there's still so much room for businesses to stand out.
Jessica, can you tell us how you source some of the unique ingredients that you use in your fermentations?
Yeah, when we started, it was really important for me to work as directly with Washington farmers as we could. So when I first started, we were sourcing a lot direct from farmers, just buying stuff at the farmers market, transporting it in my car. As we grew, we kind of met more farmers and were able to like get requests for specific types of peppers and stuff like that. Nowadays, I source most of my ingredients from like a farm distributor. So we work with two that I really love, Puget Sound Food Hub and Farm Stand Local Foods. So that lets us buy from like basically as many farms as we want at one time and get them all delivered at the same time. So it's really been a huge resource for me as we've grown. I can really get a lot of weird ingredients. I've been able to source stuff like ginger, which really doesn't grow in Washington at all, lemongrass, kind of weird like one-off projects that farmers might have grown and have some extra of. We've also gotten connected with like people that have an excess of produce, stuff that needs to find a home that they need to get rid of that we're able to take and use. And that's mostly been through those farm distributors. So they've been a huge boon for us.
Do you have any favorite local farms you want to give a shout out to?
A great farm I've been working with for the past couple of seasons, I think they're on their second growing season, is Broomstick Farm. Our name means witch in Swedish, so I really love that we can work with a witchy farm as well. Very Halloween appropriate. So they've been doing a great job. They grew like, I don't even know how many varieties of peppers, but we are making a spicy pepper vinegar with them that will probably be done in 6 to 9 months.
Consumer education is super important. Can you tell us how you educate consumers about the great products that you're creating?
We do a lot of sampling. So since we're at farmers markets constantly, we're usually walking through our process, answering questions about what fermentation is and why it's important. Vinegar education has definitely been like a big hill to climb up. People understand what vinegar is and they use it, but selling people on a fancier vinegar, understanding why our vinegar is different and of a higher quality than what they're normally finding has been definitely a lot. So a lot of tastings, a lot of demos. Sometimes we'll bring like a sample jar of peppers that are actively fermenting to the farmer's market as a prop to explain stuff. Same thing with like a vinegar mother. Any like fun byproduct we're getting from our production that we can show off to people has been a fun way to educate people.
We have a fun event here called the Stink Fest. I don't know if you've ever been to it, but
I had to miss it, unfortunately, this year, but I'm really hoping we can go next year. It has such a great name.
it's really fun because it's a fermenting festival, and so lots of people come just to talk about what they do. A lot of people around town. I have a friend who's a cheesemaker that helps to put it on and sells like cheese making kits, Claudia, and they have I think they call it a bacteria petting zoo, and so there's all these different living the mothers of different things and just all different stuff that you can go and touch and hang out with and
That's so
see
cool.
and see what makes
Yeah,
our
people
food
get
fun.
freaked out when they realize that our hot sauce we do pasteurize, so it's not technically alive, but the ferments that you are buying, like kimchi, has living stuff happening in it. It's cool. It's again, it's creating its own little ecosystem on its own.
I was wondering if you have any fermenting horror stories because I definitely have one to share, but I was wondering if you have any.
So the first batch I ever made, not in my kitchen, but like I'd finally gotten all the permits. I was in a shared commissary kitchen. So it was my first time working with like a larger batch size and in like a commercial kitchen space, which I wasn't used to being in. Um, and I totally underestimated how much produce would actually take to fill up the container. So if you fermented, usually want to have like pretty minimal headspace, a little bit of room for like bubbles, but not a ton of extra oxygen. And it got so moldy so quickly. It was so like I came in the next day just covered in mold, covered in lots of random bugs. So that first batch did have to go in the garbage, but persevered after that. And there's always stuff will always grow at random. It's definitely
When I was experimenting with recipes for my cookbook, I was doing a lot of taking the scraps of things that you were canning and trying to either ferment or let it sit or do all different things. And I was trying to make a fermented drinking vinegar with some scraps of stuff. And I put it in a bottle with a little bit of champagne yeast because I thought it would make a really nice bubbly beverage. And I went to open it. It had fermented for like over a week. And I went to open it and it exploded all over my friend in my kitchen because I was in a shared kitchen too. And she had this long, beautiful hair and she was just covered in like stinky, boozy rhubarb shrub. And it was not a party. It wasn't like
yeah.
popping a bottle of champagne. It was just like a mess and I felt so terrible. And just know that sometimes those fermented things, it's not always the best place to experiment.
Yeah. Have fun, but remember to use your fridge if you're concerned about stuff getting overpressurized, which definitely does happen.
It sure does. And I hear other people's horror stories about blowing the cabinets off of, like putting something above the refrigerator and forgetting about it or not letting it air. And then like the glass will shatter and it sounds like a grenade.
I blocked it out because it was so traumatic, but we had a barrel, so like 45 gallons of blackberry juice that got overpressurized and that like exploded through a metal barrel. No shrapnel, the lid shot off and it was a huge mess.
Yeah. So be careful out there from fermenting friends.
Say, sometimes food entrepreneurs will collaborate. Have you done any cool collaborations or partnerships that have been significantly important to Häxan Ferments?
Yeah, we've done actually quite a few. It's something I'm really, again, I really founded the business to try and focus on community and really wanting to like lift up other makers. In addition to all of our produce, all of our vinegar-based ingredients, that includes stuff like beer and sake, we get from local brewers and distillers. So Tahoma Fuji Sake provides all of our rice wine to make our rice vinegar. And it's been a cool like upcycling process because we can take essentially sake that like misses the mark or isn't going to be bottled for some reason from a pretty small operation and still pay them for it and not have to have it go to waste. We also use a lot of kind of fun products in our hot sauces. We work with Broadcast Coffee out of Seattle for we have a smoky coffee mole, so that uses their coffee, and then we also use cacao nibs from Indie Chocolate. And in both those cases, we've tried to really focus a lot of our ingredients on stuff from the Pacific Northwest. Obviously, coffee and chocolate are not native to the Northwest, but we know that we're able to work with like really responsible growers and roasters and sourcers, so we feel really good including those in our products.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hear about the different flavors of hot sauces and vinegars you have. We'll be right back.
Oregon State University's College of Agricultural Sciences and the Food Innovation Center are proud sponsors of Meaningful Marketplace. With a mission to serve all Oregonians, we are committed to giving voice to those whose food and agricultural stories are not always heard. By providing access and opportunity for a more diverse and just food system, because food brings people together.
All right, Jessica, tell us about your best sellers and all the delicious things you're creating.
Yeah, so we have 5 different hot sauces we make year round, which probably is too many, but it's kind of what we've ended up at this point. Our best seller is a hot sauce called Cherry Bomb, which is a mix of cherry bomb peppers and garlic, and then it gets its heat from Fresno peppers. So it's kind of similar to like a sriracha, but there's no added sugar. It has a little bit of honey, and then the fermentation gives it this just like really deep, like funky flavor. I always describe it as like a everyday hot sauce, and it really just like brightens everything that you put it on. So that one's our best seller. And then my favorite is Serrano roasted garlic, which is the first hot sauce I'd ever like created, the recipe where I felt like really confident moving forward. So really deeply roasted peppers, a lot of garlic, and some mezcal. And then that all ferments together and again gets this like extra funky notes. You have this nice like roasted pepper, but also just like this pickly flavor, and that's really delicious. On the vinegar side, we have a lot of kind of your standard, so wine vinegars, cider. The one I'm a huge fan of that I'm trying to get everyone to try is our malt stout vinegar. So if you've had malt vinegar like with fish and chips or fried food, we make ours with a stout beer. So it's got really caramely notes. It's like really dark, rich. It goes really nicely in like stews or any kind of like cold weather soupy type food, which obviously for the Pacific Northwest is really essential. We also do a lot of like fun produce-based vinegars, especially in the summer. So we have one I really love right now with green garlic. So really funky, kind of like a roasted garlic flavor.
Those all sound so fun. I've had your stuff before. It's super awesome. And the reason
thank
that
you.
I love doing events together is that then if people ask if I have anything that's fermented, I can just send them over to you.
It's such a specific type of hot sauce that like, yeah, it really, there's a specific hot sauce connoisseur that is always looking for the fermented stuff.
I feel like at every show people ask for it, so I think
Yeah.
it's good to have the best of both worlds in one event.
Yeah.
Speaking of two worlds, how do you balance traditional fermentation techniques with modern business practices? Like everybody wants everything fast.
Yeah, it's been tricky. The hot sauce is not too bad, but it's definitely been it was a lot of learning and planning and realizing I needed to be a lot more organized than I thought I did. I'm not an expert yet, but since we've been doing this for a number of years, I have a better idea of like how much hot sauce I need to produce on hand. The vinegar is still very tricky, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. So vinegar production takes about 6 months if we're lucky. It can definitely take longer. I now have a better idea of kind of how to manage that and how to like, I guess, increase the rate of production if we need to. But yeah, it's a lot of planning, making sure that we're on top of our inventory, that we're thinking 30 days out. And then the other kind of really difficult thing that we're still is always going to be a little bit of an issue to manage is just figuring out the finance side of it. In our case, like we're buying wine for our vinegar for 6 months out. So we're sitting on a lot of ingredients that we have to just kind of fund without being able to sell it.
Yeah, that's tough.
Are you aerating that vinegar process or how do you?
We don't.
do?
So we just do kind of the traditional open barrel fermentation. Technically, I think like Orleans method. I think there's a few
I did that
differences.
with a bottle of champagne that I bought, and I had it in my window at work for like 3 years. And every once in a while I'd shake it and add a little sugar and add some apple cider vinegar. And I actually came up with a pretty good vinegar.
Yeah, it'll take a while, but it'll turn into vinegar eventually. When I first started, I was doing more like aeration and like kind of pumping the vinegar over to like basically trying to add more oxygen. And I found it was just more of a hassle than it was worth.
Yeah.
In the end, we're getting like a better product if we just let it sit undisturbed. And it just means we have to be a little bit more careful about making sure we don't run out of inventory. So just not a problem I've solved fully yet, but.
And Emily, this is our second Washington show and our second hot sauce buddy. Are there a lot of hot sauce makers coming out of Washington right now?
There are. Yeah, which is exciting because they're all really fun, creative flavors. And I'm curious, Jessica, what your favorite way to eat some of your hot sauces is, because I feel like I have some really tasty homework to do after all of these podcasts.
I really love cooking with all the sauces. I really think of them as like a base ingredient that goes in my food as opposed to like a dipping sauce or like something I'll have on the side. So my favorite use for our hot sauces right now, I mentioned the smoky coffee mole. I love throwing that in chili, so I'll throw like a couple tablespoons in at the end, or I'll throw that in at the beginning of cooking, and that just adds so much flavor. It's like a shortcut to like tasting like it cooked on the stove all day. I also like finishing it with like a little bit of apple cider vinegar, the chili. That's a little bit of like vinegar splashed in anything at the end is just going to elevate the entire dish.
Mm. And I saw that you just announced that you are in Whole Foods. Is that something that's new?
Yeah, it's been about a year now. So we launched through their local accelerator program. We were in the first cohort of that, which I think now has been 2 years since we did the application process. But yeah, we've been on shelves in Oregon and Washington for about a year.
Can you tell people a little bit about what that accelerator program was like in case we have people that are interested in it?
Yeah, so I was a finalist and I didn't actually end up in the incubator side of it, but we still ended up launching in the store. So the application process was really simple. I'd met the forager, who's not currently with the company anymore, a few times. And so she had really encouraged me to apply. But it was basically submitting kind of basic information to Whole Foods, also certifying that they have quite a few like excluded ingredients and stuff they don't allow in the store. So you have to go through a process to certify that if you're selected, you're eligible to sell in their stores. And then it was like a full, went through like a couple rounds of submitting, answering essay questions about the business and sort of where we saw our growth, why we were interested in moving into a partnership with Whole Foods, and then like an interview process and submitting a lot of samples. So it seems like I think it's now the main way they're bringing in local brands, but they've been, as a small company, I was very nervous to go work with a much larger grocery store, but they've been really fantastic about supporting us and like helping us get the information and programs we need for success there.
The Specialty Food Association has the Maker Prep series starting up in January of 2025. If anybody out there wants to join in, a kind of a cool 6-month program. It's all online.
Do you have plans on going to the fancy food show this year?
I'm not planning to go this year. We went last year and it was a really great experience, but this year I've got too much stuff going on, so I've decided we're gonna at least take a year off. But it was really fun to be with the Rocky Mountain business cohort. Great to meet all the other makers from the States.
When I think about your business, I think about how hard it must be to to pay for all of the supplies and then let things sit and ferment and then not be able to sell them for much later. Is it also hard to grow? Because don't you need a lot of space to have everything sitting and fermenting?
Yeah. Yeah, we ended up pretty lucky in that case. My journey to getting a space has been pretty interesting. So we started in a very small commissary that was like really set up for food trucks. I think a lot of them are. So it was people coming in and out and taking their stuff and not a lot of storage. And then after a year, I ended up moving into a space that was much bigger, but was owned by another CPG company. So they had a better understanding of sort of the kind of space I need. Unfortunately, the space was huge. They needed to get a lot more tenants in, but I happened to get in early enough that I was the only tenant for a long time. So I had a lot of space to expand. And then just in February, we finally moved into our own kitchen space, which has been feel really fortunate. It's very, very difficult, I think, in Seattle to be able to find like a space that's the right size and not needing a ton of work to make it usable. So we lucked out with that. But so I have about 800 square feet of storage and we have a lot of stuff on wheels and we use a lot of vertical space to try and make it work. My landlord has been really excited about trying to figure out new shelving for us. So I'm hoping he seems like he's gotten a project in his mind that he's going to put together for me. So we'll see if we can get some more storage. But we do a lot of vertical barrels and like rolling stuff around, and that seems to be semi-functional for right now.
It sounds like you're in some of your plans you may have had for the future right now. Do you have any new products that you're thinking about launching on the horizon?
I don't have anything major right now. So we're really focused on, I think, trying to scale our current lineup and continue to meet the demand for the products. We do a lot of like fun one-off stuff for farmers markets. So that's been sort of I've really started the business as sort of like a creative outlet. And as we grow and we have more like demand for a lot of our products, it means that I'm making the same product over and over again. It's not necessarily, it doesn't feel as creative, but we've been able to do a lot of like random ferments that we just make available to people in Seattle. So the most recent thing that's included has been a switchel, which is like a type of a drinking vinegar that's popular. I don't actually 100% know the difference between switchel and shrub, but I think it's essentially a shrub. So we've been making those with our vinegars and local fruit and honey, and that's been really good.
I think switchel just sounds cool.
It does sound much cooler. So, the most recent one we made is blackberry ginger, which is really delicious. So I think that will actually be debuting at the Seattle Gobble Up if anyone's around for that.
Oh, and are you going to be at the Portland one too?
I won't be at the Portland one.
Oh, man, we'll be like ships passing in the night.
Yeah. I wanted to do the Portland one, but we're doing a big late Halloween party that unfortunately I need to attend. So
Are you ready to take your food packaging to the next level? Elevate your brand with epackagesupply.com. ePackage Supply offers high-quality, food-grade packaging proudly made in the USA. Plus, they're your one-stop shop for expert advice, custom labels, and printing options. Whether you're just starting out or scaling up, ePackage Supply provides flexible quantities and competitive pricing to fit your business's unique needs. Visit epackagesupply.com and use code MEANINGFUL10. That's meaningful10 for 10% off your order. Or call 866-775-4881 to chat with a food packaging expert. ePackage Supply, your partner in packaging. Visit epackagesupply.com today.
What advice would you give someone interested in starting their own fermentation business?
that's a great question. I think talk to people that are currently in the business. I think getting a good sense of sort of there's a big difference, I think, between fermenting in your kitchen and then fermenting on a much bigger scale. So I think getting a better idea of sort of what labor that entails, and thinking about what kind of fermentation you want to do. One thing I'll note that's different about us is that all of our products are shelf stable, which has been huge for me in that we don't have to deal with refrigeration and like refrigerated transport. If you're doing a more traditional fermented pickle company or kimchi, that's one thing you'll have to consider. So I think get a really solid idea of sort of what type of ferments you want to focus on, figure out some kind of niche that makes sense for you. And, I talk to someone that is currently fermenting on a larger scale and see what kind of work goes into that.
I think that's great advice. And we always like to send people to you directly. So what's the best way for them to purchase your products?
So on our site is the best, although I will know we also just launched on Amazon. So if you already shop on Amazon and are interested in purchasing and leaving a review, that would also be a big help right now.
5-star review.
Yes, 5 stars. But our website has all of our products, and that's going to have our best selection and like most up to date. If you want any of our fun seasonal flavors, I think our mustard habanero is going to go live in the next couple of days. So
that sounds rad. I'm in.
Congrats.
Emily, you have any final questions for Jessica?
I'm just so curious to know, like, big picture, 6 years is, a lot of time for how fast some food landscapes can change. And I'm curious, as people have gotten more into consuming fermented products and making them and learning that they should probably just buy them and things, if you've seen the demand really change for your product and the questions change.
The questions have definitely changed at the farmers market. And I would like to think it's some of our education, but I think it's also just people are learning a lot more. Yeah, we've definitely seen, I think, a big shift in people being more interested in the process versus just the flavor. And the vinegar I've been doing for about 4 years. So yeah, I think we started it right at the end of, in 2020. And people are way more educated about vinegar now, even than compared to 4 years ago. Like a lot of people want to know about the process and how it's being made. And yeah, it's definitely been, I think people are more interested in consuming stuff for their health as well.
Well, it's been great to talk to you today and hear more about your biz. Can you give your website one more time so people can go and find you?
Yeah, we're HäxanFerments.com.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Meaningful Marketplace podcast. Before you go, show some love for our podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Meaningful Marketplace Podcast. And you can call or text Sarah and I with questions at 503-395-8858. And we could not do this without our fantastic team at Joy of Creation Production. Thank you to Kayleen, our production coordinator, and Haley, our audio engineer. We'll be back next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye for now.